is not looking the way they usually do, or if your teen is an introvert and usually reserved, it might be a little bit harder to pick up on whether or not they're depressed. But here are all the things to look out for. They're isolating themselves, meaning they don't hang out as much with you. They don't even want to hang out with friends that much. They're always locked away in their room. Big one for parents. Why are you always locked away in your room? You don't do anything. You're not coming out. You're always in there. Sign of depression. So they're isolating themselves. They're tired and energyless all the time. They don't have that energy. They're so drained. Then we go, oh, you're so lazy. Oh, you don't do anything. Then when they oversleep, all you do is sleep. You don't do anything but sleep. Familiar? Then of course, if they're comfort eating or they are stress eating, then it's like, oh my God, you're always snacking. Why are you not eating something healthy? You're always eating chocolate. You're always eating ice cream. And we're constantly attacking them for these things without realizing that it could be signs of depression. Then of course, if they're not sleeping, what do? Oh, you're always up all night. You're probably on your phone talking to friends, or you're watching shows. You don't care to sleep. And then the next day you're so tired, and you blame the tiredness and lack of energy on the fact that they're up all night. Perhaps not by choice. Perhaps they do want to sleep, but because of insomnia, they cannot sleep. And of course, if it's to the other extreme where they're not eating instead of overeating, oh, you don't eat, you're starving yourself. What do you want to look like? And again, we're constantly attacking instead of realizing that something could be wrong. If now they have difficulties doing their homework, they're not focusing, they're not concentrating, they're zoning out, we again attack them. Why aren't you signing into classes, especially now that classes are online because of COVID? Why aren't you signing into classes? Why are you doing other things? Why are you so distracted? What's going on with you? And we're constantly attacking instead of thinking, maybe if I looked at all these signs, I could realize that my child is depressed. Teenagers also tend to get a little bit restless, edgy, and irritable. And of course, when they talk back to us, or they're snappy, or they're reactive, we're like, how rude, how disrespectful. Not realizing that, you know what, they don't necessarily mean to be this way. It's just that it's their mood, and they're not fully in control of this mood, especially if it's a depressive mood. And of course, big for teens, self-esteem, self-confidence issues, feelings of worthlessness, hopelessness, helplessness. And for teens too, there is that wanting to self-harm. They may cut, they may burn. If you're checking for cuts, if you're interested, please be careful how you go about it, because it's very sensitive. Do not be aggressive in your approach. Do not be angry in your approach, but you can check wrists and you can check thighs for cuts. Or if they don't actually want to die, but they're frustrated, they might just say, you know what, I'm so tired of living. I just don't want to exist, but not necessarily that they want to take their own life. There are so many teenagers who actually suffer from depression, but we look past it the same way we look past it in children, because we don't think that they have problems that can actually affect them. Another thing that you might find with your teen is that they're not showering, they're not maintaining their hygiene, they're not brushing their teeth, they don't care what they look like, they are not taking care of the way they dress anymore, especially if they used to care about these things. You're going to notice a decline in all of those things, especially when they're going through that depressive episode. You might also find that not only is your teen withdrawing and isolating themselves, but maybe they're not interested in going out with friends anymore. And you might think, that's strange, they always liked going out. But like I mentioned, if your teen is an introvert and never really liked going out, that would be a hard one to pick up on. And another thing that happens with teens is that they may start using or abusing alcohol and different substances. If they've never used it before, now as a coping mechanism, they may start to drink, or they may start using other drugs and saying, you know what, okay, I'm gonna smoke some weed because it helps me fall asleep, or I'm gonna smoke some weed because it calms me down. Now, with depression, like I had mentioned before, there are lots of negative thoughts. Same applies for teenagers as well. So they may use these substances to also kind of numb that feeling and numb the pain that they're experiencing. And that can be a very slippery slope. And it's not something that I don't see at work. I see this all the time. Parents bring their teens in, or the teens themselves are asking for help because they do their research. They have the internet. They realize, oh my God, what I'm experiencing is not normal. I am going through depression. I need help. So next time, ask yourself, are they genuinely being lazy? Or is it this lack of motivation, lack of energy, and that no will to do anything that's causing them to be the way they are? Another thing that teenagers do face that sometimes we may not fully want to accept is them questioning their sexuality. That is a big thing these days. And a lot of them are trying to figure out who they are, what they are, and where they stand on the spectrum. Now, of course, that is extremely taboo in our society. And if you are nothing but straight, then it is a problem. And not all parents are very supportive or understanding of their children. And you might think, but a teenager, they don't even know what they want. They don't even know anything. They haven't experienced anything. Okay, I hear you. But they may know from an early age that, you know what, I don't like how I look physically, or I don't like that I have a chest, and you know, I may prefer to be a boy, or a boy might have some feminine traits, and he might think, you know what, I actually prefer to be a female, and they will at least know that. Then they're going to figure themselves out as time goes by. Now, not having that ability to reach out and speak to anybody about it, not being able to come to you as a parent and talk because they're going to be criticized for it, or attacked for it, or backlashed for it, and not having that space in society to really go, that is something that they're going to struggle with. And if they have depression, of course, this is going to make it worse because they just feel like they're even more isolated as a person and as an individual, and they feel like they can't fit into any groups, especially in school or in society. So please, let's be open-minded when our teens or our children are talking to us about these things, and at least listen to them. And if you don't know what to say, please take them to a professional, let them talk to that person, and they can guide them and figure things out together. And what about the elderly? They also suffer from depression. And we may ask, but why? They're retired, they're at home, they're relaxing. But no, they can also feel depressed, especially if they have lost their partner, or if they have lost a loved one before, or if they live alone and they suffer from loneliness. But they may more, apart from the signs and symptoms that we have been talking about, they may experience more aches, more pains, remember, because they have other illnesses, more fatigue, and of course, more of that isolated feeling. They may have a lot of memory problems, and in the elderly, there is still that aspect of neglecting their personal care and health. And what are some of the things that you think could cause an elderly person to be depressed? Well, they can have family issues, they can have terminal illnesses, they can have other medical conditions that are causing them to be in pain or to feel unwell or not be able to take care of themselves. They may have to rely on others, especially financially, because they're no longer working. And if in these situations, they're made to feel like a burden, or like it's too much trouble for the other person, or they're creating a difficulty or a disruption in that other person's life, they're not going to be comfortable and they're going to feel unhappy. And of course, if they're no longer working or doing things, they may feel like, what is my purpose? What am I here to do? I no longer am of use to anyone and I'm not productive. And that can make them feel worse. And of course, that makes them feel worthless, helpless, useless, and that obviously impacts their depression a lot more. And of course, the elderly, they're not an exception for being at risk for suicide. And especially if they feel, like I had mentioned before, that they are a burden and that they are a chore, they will have this negative thought and they will just say, well, what's the point? If they do have a terminal illness or medical condition that's causing them to be in a lot of pain and anguish, very frequently you'll hear them say, well, what's the point of me living? It's not best right? So when they say these things, don't take it for granted, because they may truly be feeling like, you know what, I don't see the point of living and I would like to die. Of course, if any of this happens, please right away get some help. So now that we've learned to identify what depression looks like in all age ranges, I hope that that really helps. And remember not to take any of it for granted, because while before we may not have known how to pick up on these signs and symptoms, we do now. And anytime you notice that someone that you may know or close to you may be experiencing depression, please get them the help that they could get.